Well, hey there, everybody. It's your boy, Mr. Perry, and we are continuing our way through Unit 4. This time we're looking at Lesson 3, and holy cow, this is a big one because now we're going to be looking at loops and strings. And here is where we can make a lot of fancy things happen, and definitely where we want to get a lot of practice. So let's go ahead, and before we get into loops and strings, let's just do some quick review of what we remember about strings. So remember that strings have their own index values. So here we have a string object called name being instantiated, and it's got AP CSP in there. So what that means is your string is AP space CSP, and our index values range from 0 all the way up to 5. But of course, if I called the method name.length, that would return 6 because we've got 6 characters in here. And now that we're going to start looping through strings, there's going to be a few things that we're going to want to remember as well. First off, very useful to remember that the last character of any string is can be referred to by name.length minus 1. So, name.length minus 1 will give you the index value of this particular character. And then if we ever need to go to the midpoint of a string, we can do name.length divided by 2. And because, oh boy, because this one has a length of 6, it would return 3, right? So that would take you to character number 3. And there you go. Of course, if the length of this string was only 5, then name.length divided by 2 would take you down here to index 2, because 5 divided by 2 is 2.5. But of course, it would be integer division, so it would truncate, and it would take you down to 2. So just a useful little thing to keep in mind, that name.length, if it's an even number for the length of the string, it'll take you to that midpoint. But if it's an odd number for the length of the string, it's going to take you to the midpoint, and then round down. So anyways, let's go ahead and keep things moving here. Let's talk about loops and strings. So there's a lot of different ways that you can use loops and strings. One common way is using a while loop in order to find letters. So while loops can be used in combination with the index of method to locate certain characters in a string. So let's say, for instance, that that you were looking for a letter C in a string. So here we've got our string object name, and it's AP CSA. And let's say we wanted to use a while loop to find, whether or not this has a letter C in it, or where it is. So what we would do is we would declare a variable to store the index of each of these characters. Very often when you're working with strings and you're going to be looping through those strings, the index is going to play a really key role. So here we're setting the index to be 0, and it says while name.index of C is greater than or equal to 0. So what this while loop is going to do is it's going to search the string for a letter C. And if it does find a letter C, then obviously the index of C is going to be greater than or equal to 0, because it's either in this 0 position, or it's going to be higher than that. So that means this while loop is going to execute as long as there is a letter C in the string. So then the next thing you would do is you would say index is equal to, so as long as you know that there's a letter, that there's a C in your string, then you can reassign the index to be name.index of C. And then down here, string letter equals name.substring from the index plus index plus 1. So these two lines create a substring that includes only the letter that you're searching for. So if you're searching for a particular letter in a string, you can use a while loop, set the index to be 0 outside of the while loop. But inside the while loop, you would do name.index of whatever letter you're looking for. And as long as that's greater than or equal to 0, then go ahead and reassign your index to be the index of C. So in this case, the index of C is 3. So 3 would just get replaced right here, right? So while 3 is greater than or equal to 0, that means this is going to, go ahead and loop through. So now 3 is being stored as index, and now when we are just trying to snag our letter, string letter equals name.substring from 3 to 4. So that would just get the substring, right here. Would just grab that letter C and store it as that letter, and so now you've created a loop that loops through this string, finds whether or not a certain character is in that string, and if it is, stores it. And there you go. You could continue to do whatever you needed to do with that program. So you can, one thing that I like to do is, simplify complex looking code by substituting the integers where it's appropriate. So, again, when you see this and it says index equals name.index of C, and then string letter equals name.substring from index plus 1, or from index to index plus 1, sometimes this can get confusing. And just knowing, remembering that index of returns an integer, you can just say index equals 3, right? Or you can think of it as index equals 3. And then again, string letter equals name.substring from 3 to 4. It's the same thing, again, just kind of helps you, simplify the code that's got, more words and more detail to it. You can apply a little bit of abstraction and just say, all right, well, in your head, you can just think of it as index equals 3, and then you're taking the substring from 3 to 4. All right, let's look at some other examples here. So now the challenge is find and remove all instances of letter A in the name, so or in our variable name. So here we've got string name equals new string. AP CSA is what's being stored this time. And again, our challenge for this loop activity is to find and remove all instances of letter A. So since we're looking for a specific letter, I'll set up my while loop just like I did before. Int index equals 0, and then while name.index of A is greater than or equal to 0. But we're going to do something different this time. We're not just going to try to find where the letter is. We're going to try to remove the letter, which means we're going to need to create an altered version of this string. So this is important to remember from what we learned earlier. Strings are immutable, which means once they have been instantiated, they can't be changed. So I can't just take name and just like create a new version of or like alter it, right? Like name is referring to this area of memory in Java, and AP CSA is being stored there. So if I need to alter it, it says in order to create a new altered version of a string, you're going to have to kind of cut it up into pieces, and you have to declare new variables in order to store the parts that you need to solve the challenge. So what we're going to do here is we're going to find, all right, while name.index of A is greater than or equal to 0, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to find where that letter A is and store it as index. So we're going to update index to be name.index of A. All right, so that'll be the next step in our algorithm here. And now we're going to start to slice this string up into its parts. So string first part equals name.substring from 0 to the index. So remember, when you call the substring method, it includes the first index value, and it goes all the way up to the next index value, but it doesn't include this. So then the next thing that we're going to do is create another string variable, call it last part, and set that equal to be name.substring from the index plus 1. And then finally, we're going to update name to now be first part plus last part. Now let's go ahead and go through this using a trace table and see how this actually works. All right. So if I created a trace table, I'm going to keep track of my index because that's one of my variables. I've got the variable first part, so I'm going to keep track of that. I've got the variable last part, so I'm going to keep track of that. And of course, we've got the variable name that we want to keep track of as well. Okay. So A is in the first time it appears in the string is at index 0. So when you say index equals name.index of A, this returns the integer 0, and so I'm just putting that in my trace table. Right now, index is set to 0. Now, we're going to get the substring from 0 to 0, which is just an empty string. If you call the substring method and you say start at this index and then end at this same index value, then nothing gets nothing would get stored in that instance. So on the first pass of this loop, first part is just an empty string. There's nothing there because, again, the substring from 0 to 0 is nothing. It's just an empty string. Now we need to get the last part. And so this is going to go from, last part is going to be name.substring from 0 plus 1. So that means we're going to be starting at index 1. So index 1 is over here, letter P, and it's just going to include the rest of the string because, again, when we do the substring method with just one parameter, it starts at that index and then does the rest of the string. So now last part has P space CSA. And now we're going to go ahead and update name to be first part plus last part. Well, first part is empty, and then last part has all of this. So now name has P space CSA. So now we go back to the top of our while loop and it checks, does name, is the index of A greater than or equal to 0? Well, of course it is. This new version of a name has A right here at index 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So now index is 4. When we get to this first line of code, index is now going to be 4. So we go to our next line of code, and we now need to get the first part is going to be name.substring from 0 to 4. So that's going to start here at P and go all the way up to, but not include this last, character. So now first part has P space CS. Now we need to update last part to be 4 plus 1, which is going to be 5. So that's going to be the index, that's going to be the substring starting at index 5, which has nothing there. So we're going to get an empty string once again. Then finally, down here, we add them both together. First part plus last part is going to give us just PCS. And now name is, this updated version of it without the letter A's. So that's another example of how you can use, loops, while loops, and, to manipulate strings. So one of the takeaways here is that while loops are used in conjunction with the index of method when you want to find a character or a substring in a string, and you don't know how many times the loop needs to run. So if you're looking for a specific character or if you're looking for a substring, again, you're going to use a while loop and combine it with index of, and basically just follow the same kind of strategy that we just practiced here. So now we're going to look at for loops. Now, for loops are used when you need to loop through an entire string. All right. And when you do a for loop to loop through a string, you're going to follow a basic pattern. And we're gonna alter our syntax. So here we go, string name equals new string AP CSA. And let's say I needed to loop through this string and check each individual character for something. The way I would do it is I would start a for loop like usual. I would say for int I equals 0, semicolon. But now what I would do is I would say as long as I is less than name.length, and call the length method with the name of the variable that you're going through. So as long as I is less than name.length, and then obviously we just do I++. So there you go. Now the next thing we would want to do is we would want to add some code inside of here to see what it is that we're trying to do. Well, in this case, we're going to once again search for the letter C. And the way we would do it this time is we would say if name.substring from I to I plus 1 dot equals C, then go ahead and do int C index is equal to I. So what's happening here is, your I is your loop control variable. And so when I is 0, it checks if name.substring from 0 to 1 equals C. Well, obviously the substring from 0 to 1 is just letter A, and that doesn't equal C, so nothing happens. And then I would go up to 1, and it would check, letter P. And then I would go up to number 2, and it would check this space. And then I would go up to 3. And when I goes up to 3, if name.substring from 3 to 4 dot equals C, again, the substring from 3 to 4 is just going to be letter C, so this would evaluate to true. And then int C index is equal to I. Well, right now I would be 3, so we would now have the index of the letter C in this particular string. So that's how this for loop kind of loops through and does what we're trying to get it to do. And then here is an example from CSAwesome, and the goal here is to actually reverse the original string. So our original string is, hello. Oh, goodness gracious. And this time, what we're going to do is we're going to reverse it. Now, since we're going to alter this string, again, what we need to do is create a new variable called reversed. And then we'll go ahead and go through and look at how this for loop is doing what we're trying to get it to do. So again, the goal here is to start with a string called S and have it set to be hello. And the ultimate goal is to print S reversed is, and then show what it is reversed. So let's go ahead and go through and see how this one's going to work. So again, when manipulating or changing a string, you often have to create a new empty string that gets built using for loops and substring methods. So again, our goal is to print this reversed string. So again, we're creating a new variable, and we'll go ahead and start it as an empty string. But what's going to happen is it's going to get built to be the string that we're actually aiming for, which again will be that string reversed. So let's go ahead and trace this through. Our first variable is S, and that's storing hello. Our next variable is S reversed, which right now has nothing in it. The ith letter is another string variable. So again, I've got that being stored here. And then last, we've got our loop control variable I, which I'm storing over here. So, when I is 0, which of course is the way this loop is set up, it's going to start at 0. Then, again, 0 is definitely less than the length of the string. The length of the string is 5. So 0 is less than 5, evaluates to true. That means we're going to go ahead and go into our loop and do what we need to do down here. So ith letter is equal to s.substring from I to I plus 1. So what that means is the substring from 0 to 1, which is just our letter H, and that is being stored currently in ith letter. Now, S reversed is equal to ith letter plus S reversed. So H goes right here, and S reversed, currently doesn't have anything in it. So there's nothing to concatenate onto the end here. All right, and then what we do is we go ahead and increment our I variable. So I goes up to 1, and now it checks is 1 less than 5. 1 is less than 5. That evaluates to true. So that means we go back into our loop, and now the ith letter is going to be the substring from 1 to 2. Which is going to be obviously letter E. So that goes into our trace table. We're now storing letter E. And now S reversed equals ith letter plus reversed. So the ith letter is E. So that's going to that's going to go first. And then it's going to get added to whatever is currently in S reversed, which is currently the letter H. So when we put them together in that order, it becomes EH, because S reversed is now going to be the ith letter plus S reversed. So whatever that letter was we pulled out up there goes at the beginning of it, and then the rest of it gets concatenated. So now we increment our loop control variable. We're up to 2. 2 is still less than 5, so our condition is still evaluating to true. So now we go back into here. So now we're going to get the substring from 2 to 3, which is going to be our letter L. So I've got that in our trace table. And now we concatenate that to the beginning of S reversed. So now LEH is what we have. We'll take our I up to 3. 3 is still less than 5. So now we're going to get the next substring from 3 to 4, which is going to be our next letter L. So that's in our trace table. Now we add that letter L to the beginning of S reversed. And now I goes up to 4. 4 is still less than 5. So now we're going to grab that letter O from our string S and store that as the ith letter. Then we concatenate it to the beginning of our string. So now we have O-L-L-E-H. And then finally, our loop control variable goes up to 5. And now 5 is less than 5 is false. So this loop is done executing. And we now jump down here to our print statement. And it's going to say hello, which was S. And then reversed is, and then our S reversed right here. So that's how that one works. All right. As you can see, working with strings and loops is going to take a lot of practice. There's a lot of different ways that you can manipulate strings. And so we'll be spending a little bit of time on this lesson. But it's just, it's good for us to know as our lesson review, loops can be used to traverse or to process a string. And there are kind of some standard algorithms that utilize string traversals to do a couple of things, to find if one or more substrings has a particular property. So you can check if a substring has, certain elements to it. You can determine the number of substrings that meet a specific criteria. So you can count how many times, something occurs within a string. You can also create a new string with the characters that are reversed. And you can do even more than that. Becoming comfortable with loops and strings is going to play a major role in your ability to do well on the AP exam. Including on both the multiple choice as well as the FRQs. So I recommend as much practice as possible, not only with the CSAwesome curriculum, but also with our coding bat practices. All right, guys. Well, thanks for watching. I will see you in class. As always, leave a question or a comment on today's video. Adios.